Do it. Well, hey guys, I have today a very special guest and a friend of mine and Tracy's, Mr. Brad Ball. We met Brad, a couple of years ago. I was trying to remember where we met you at. Which
Mexico.
ballroom? Was it the Mexico event?
Costa Rica, yeah.
And it's kind of funny. It feels like we've known you for a lot longer than actually we have. There's those special people that come into your life, and you just have those connections with. And Brad was definitely one of those guys. He's just one of those just very fun-loving, big heart, but the guy is a brilliant genius. I was joking with him last night on a phone call. I think I joked with you in the Park City Mastermind as well, that you remind me of Owen Wilson in Meet the Parents, because like every darn thing that he does, it's like he excels at everything. But he would be the last person to brag about himself. That's probably one of his greatest talents is just being as humble as he is. I was going to open it up for you and explain deeper about yourself to those listening, and but also what you do for a living.
Okay. I mean, I could talk for hours about that, but so I am an artist, and I've been drawing and painting since I was a kid. And there was a time in high school where I almost got out of it, and I was more of, hey, I want to do sports, and art wasn't the thing to do, and ended up sticking with it because schedules changed, and went to college on an art scholarship, and the rest is history. But my entrepreneurial career really started in part because of some personal things that had happened. But I went to art school. I never thought I was going to be a business owner. Now, my mother might have told you otherwise just because of knowing me. But what happened in 2000 was my mom got sick. And so I graduated college in 98 with an art degree and actually worked at the university doing graphic design. And so when she got sick, I had the option of continue to work or quit and take care of her because she was bedridden for a couple of years. And so I chose, hey, I could make more money working from home than I could at this job at the university. And that's what I did. And so, that story is a whole other rabbit trail in terms of what happened. But if it wasn't for my mom's illness, I would have probably never gotten into becoming an entrepreneur. And it really set me up for a good foundation of moving forward. Now, I took care of her for 2 years, and then she ended up passing 2 years later. But when I go back and I look at, the journey that I've been on, I could go the last 20 years since 2000 and be like, this happened for this reason, and this happened, and this happened. And so in 2005, after I've been freelancing and working, for myself for 5 years, my now business partner and I, we actually met because he used to play keyboards in a band that I would paint on stage with.
Wow.
And so in 2000, he came to me and said, hey, I want to do what you do. And so I kind of helped him get into the creative world. He did more web and video, and I did more design and web. And so in 2004, we were passing jobs back and forth, and we're like, hey, we could make something of this. And so in 2005, we incorporated and hired our first employee. And so for the first 10 years of me being on my own, I never really thought of it as a business. It was just what I did. And, I didn't really sell anything. It was more of a service and trying to take care of people. But I'd say, in 2010-ish, around there, we really started treating it as a business, and that's where it kind of changed. And then I guess I joined War Room 2.5, 3 years ago, and that really kind of helped propel us in really learning what this actually looks like, what it is to be a leader, what it is to be a business. And going back to the journey aspect of it, it's interesting that, in 2005, our first employee was kind of my guy. I trained him at 19. And we had to part ways around 2008. And it was a very difficult time for me. And also, if you think about that, that was also one of the down times of the economy.
Yes, sir.
And that really never affected us because we were small and agile. But the couple of years after that were really hard for me because that was my guy that I trained. And but what's interesting, it was a difficult situation overall. I don't want to go into the deep details, but we weren't really on great speaking terms. And probably 6 months to a year after everything had happened, I just felt about reaching out to him. And so I'm in Fort Worth, and it's a big town, but it's small. And in a lot of communities, you don't really ever want to burn bridges, no matter how bad a situation gets. And so I reached out to him and I said, "Hey, man, we probably could have done things differently." And actually, I texted him. It was during the Texas Rangers were in the World Series,
Oh,
and
wow.
I was so burdened by it. I said, "Hey, let's have coffee," and he said, "Why would I want to have coffee with you?" And I texted him this long thing and basically said, "Man, I apologize." And he ended up, it was this long text. He ended up
It
responding.
took some guts to send that text to start with.
But
It's a big man to do that.
this is part of the journey though. And so he said, "Okay, I'll meet for you coffee house tomorrow at 10." And we met, had a great conversation. Nothing was, there was no bridge that was gapped but it started a conversation. And probably 2 or 3 years later, it had developed into a better relationship. And we ended up acquiring the agency he started after we parted ways, pretty much for pennies on the dollar, because what's cool is he had started another business. And so he's a really good friend of mine now, especially
Awesome.
back. And he founded a company called The Music Bed. And they license music for commercials and other things like that. And he's uber successful entrepreneur. And so when I go back and I look at what happened in 2005, or not 2005, but when all this happened, he was an entrepreneur. He's hungry, and nobody did anything wrong. There wasn't anything that could have been done differently. But if we had not gone through that journey, we would not be where we are today, and he would not be where he is today. And so I think as business owners, especially in times like these, we forget about that journey and really trying to see the silver lining to everything. And so for us, letting go of people is very hard, as a lot of people, and we don't do it often. But it's amazing to hear the stories that, you struggle with something, and when you do, or you have to part ways with somebody, a year goes by and they're like, "Man, thank you for this," because I had one employee, this was one of our early hires. They just weren't working out, and they were extremely bitter. A year or two goes by, and she would see my business partner at Target and avoid him because they lived kind of in the same area. And she came to him a couple years later and said, "Man, I just have to thank you, because if you hadn't let me go, I'd have gone down a different path, and I'm doing it absolutely what I love." She'd become a teacher.
That's
And
awesome.
and as
Sometimes we could be doing them a disservice, especially if they're not in love with or maybe not even in love, if they're not enjoying what they're doing, if it's, sucking the life out of them, that can be something that, we can be doing them a disservice to not part ways in at times.
Yeah. And so what I tell my employees, and this is a part of our culture, and I'm very big on culture. That's one of the things that I'm really push, is that if you're not happy here, you need to find some place where you're happy. And because you only live once, and your job should be fulfilling and not tear you down. And so even during this COVID transition, we had to try to make some adjustments just to really get ahead of it. And the support from every employee from all the decisions we had to make was off the charts. And I think part of that is just building the relationship with your people and communicating. And if you can do that, it's huge. And so a lot of this goes back to really, when we talk about creativity and art, some of it just talks about slowing down and really thinking and taking the time to do that. I mean, a lot of people say, "Oh, I'm not creative, I'm not an artist." Well, I would challenge you that you probably are. And I use one of the most famous people probably in my lifetime, just because he was a president, George W. Bush. Do you know what he's doing now?
What's he doing?
He's painting.
Really? I didn't know that.
An oil man, business guy, president is a painter. And so
Wow.
if you think about that, and this is where what I want to start this kind of thought process or journey is, as kids, what do we do? If we're in a car, I remember driving down the road as a kid, because we didn't fly anywhere. We drove to Colorado skiing. That was our trip. And you didn't have video games. You had to take, cassette deck, but what did you do? You'd look outside and look at the clouds. And then what'd you do? Your imagination ran wild. You started to see, if you're a girl, maybe it was princesses or unicorns. If you're a guy, it was, I remember Lone Ranger. It was all types of things. The creativity just was rampant. But then what happens? You get into school and you sit in a chair all day. And as you get older, you get used to that.
Kills some of your creativity.
Exactly. And I was lucky enough that I stayed in art throughout my high school career. Even though I wasn't the best artist, I just loved it. And I think that's what it amounts to, is loving what you do. And I think everybody has an artist inside, because there's a famous artist named Keith Haring. If you ever know who he was, he painted stick figures. Now, some of them are really cool stick figures, but his paintings went for millions and millions of dollars back in the 80s because of he did some chalk stuff in the subways and stuff like that. But ultimately, they were really cool stick figures. And so if you look at people like Jackson Pollock, if you know who that is, he was called Jack the Dripper because he would just drip paint on a canvas, and that was art. Now, as an artist, I see a lot of different things. I've seen gone into a gallery and seen somebody put a toilet in a gallery, and I'm like, that's not really art to me. I get the psychological side of it, but I'm not all about that psychological stuff. It's like, I want it to look cool, or, have some.
I love that painting behind you, by the way. It's amazing.
And so
how long did it take you to paint that?
5 to 8 minutes. I don't remember. I was practicing.
It's amazing what he does in minutes.
And I posted it on my Facebook yesterday. I sped it up, but I saw that painting in Punta Mita, or a painting like it, and it's kind of inspired me to be like, man, that would be cool, because I don't really paint skulls. I do people sometimes, but that's probably not the thing I'm most successful at. Animals I'm actually really good at, but I started out.
What's your favorite animal? Is there a favorite animal to?
The one I paint the most is a lion, just because.
Love it. I'm a Leo.
I started out painting in churches, and I started in about 97, 98, and I don't know, there was a chalk artist and a potter that used to do stuff on stage. Nobody ever really painted on canvas on stage. And so it's very different now than it was back then, because, at a church, there's all this carpet and you don't want to get paint everywhere. And so now you'll see artists just throwing paint everywhere. But when I started, it was really refined and limited. And basically it was a friend of mine who had an album coming out, and he wanted to basically bring art and dance back into the church world, because if you thought creativity aspect was never a part of religion or church or anything like that. And so that's really where I started. And so it was very improvisational, very jazz-like, come up with no ideas, just do what you feel led at the time. And so it was great to start that way, because it prepared me, because I had to really kind of trust the process. And this will also apply to business, that not every painting I've done live turns out excellent. I mean, as an artist, I can be very picky in particular. That, oh man, that was the worst painting I've ever done. And even this one here, that as cool it is, man, I can do better. That's
awesome. That perfectionism that lives within you, and the art, which I guess one of my favorite sayings is that perfection is the enemy of execution. So we can be too much perfectionist and not get things done. But I think it was really cool that you actually, didn't you give a talk one time, like in front of 8,000 people, and you were painting on stage? Was that right? Or
yeah, I just painted. I had 8 minutes to do a 6 foot by 7 foot painting. And so I could probably pull it and show it in a minute, but yeah, it was cool. It was 8,000 people in I think it's PepsiCo Center in Denver, Colorado. And so I had 8,000 women behind me, and my stepmother-in-law was out there. Stepmother-in-law was actually in the audience, and it was you get nervous just because of, hey, you got to get up there and perform. This one, I didn't really feel as nervous until I realized on stage my leg was literally shaking. And I didn't feel nervous at all, but I think part of it was the organization that brought me in was very particular on what they wanted. And, it may have been somewhat out of what I would normally do. And so I want to make sure that they like it and they approve of it. And so that's probably where some of the nervous came from. And it was interesting on the call yesterday, Chris and Jen Chris Winfield and Jen Gottlieb, they talked about the imposter mentality. And I think we all, as entrepreneurs or business owners, and I'm sure there's some real estate agents here, they kind of feel that, like, what do I have to bring to the table, or what do I have to offer?
I'm not good enough.
And I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
And as an artist, I deal with that just because there's things that I'm not great at. But understanding that and either practicing that, making myself better, but realizing your weaknesses can become strengths. And so that's what I've been doing. Like, I've committed to something that really takes me out of my comfort zone in a high profile. Basically, I'm going to have to paint a celebrity. And so making it look like a celebrity is easier than said than done. And so,
Do you have to do it within 5 minutes too?
We haven't gone the time frame, but more than likely, it's a different setting. And so, I've painted with speakers. I've painted to one song or an hour. It's fun when I have enough time that I can take time to really develop it, like a full music set when I started. But the ones that are the most exciting and have the most energy are those 5 minutes that, bam, 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 go, because it's all laid out there. And talking about this painting is that, it may not be perfect in certain areas, but that's the beauty of it, is that it's perfection that makes it beautiful. And that's where you see kind of the rawness and the realness behind it. And so I think that applies as well in businesses, that, there's perfection is really hard to find. And so, even going through our history of business, that we haven't been perfect, but we take it day by day and, take each hurdle and take that to the next step. And when we look back on that journey, we're going to see how far we've come. And I'm sure you and Tracy can both vouch for that I think it was 2012, Tracy had to step out on, her own. She saw that, man, I could do this. But that journey along the way of where she is now, there were things that happened that propelled her to where she is. And I think that's important, that you go through those things. My business partner talks about failure all the time. And I actually hate when he talks about it, because we don't want our employees to fail, because then, that can hit the bottom line. But, oh shoot, I wish I could pull the quote from yesterday. But it's the failure, or it's the things that challenge us that make us who we are. It's what build character. And so we tell our employees that it's okay to fail, but you need to learn from that mistake, or you need to learn from that failure. That will really drive you. And so
which changes your perspective.
Right. And so if we're talking about art, the first thing is vision. Do you have a vision for where you are, where you're going to go? And, I've been working on a talk specifically kind of about that. And so, Gino Wickman, he has the book called Traction, which a lot of businesses are building, their businesses on. And, it's great, but he talks about, hey, you can, or people in War Room, they talk, 10x your business. Well, what does that really look like? How can you 10x your business? There's variables that make that extremely difficult, because you can have 10 times the business come in, but can you facilitate it? Can you actually deliver that? And so if you and Tracy had 1,000 homes that all of a sudden came up, could you sell those that quickly?
How can you get 10x fulfillment from what you're doing on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah. If you're selling a product, I could 10x that. But then you have other things like supply chain, or am I going to run out of stock? All those variables. Yeah. So there's things that you got to look at. And so you really got to take the time to slow down. And so when I talk about vision, I remember in college, it was actually extremely embarrassing, is that there was an artist, he had painted these chrome bowls, okay? And I'm sure you have them in your house and you sit them on your counter, chrome or silver. What color are they? And so I walked up and I said, man, that silver, that looks real. What color did you use? And he just looked at me and he laughed. And I stopped and I slowed down and I looked, I'm like, oh crap, I'm an idiot. Because think about it. A chrome bowl, what does it actually do? Is it a color? You can answer.
That's a great question. I feel like you're baiting me for sure.
I am. Chrome bowls are not colors. What do? They reflect what's around. And so if you go and you take a chrome bowl and you sit it on a desk and put an apple by it, what's it going to do? Or an orange? It's going to reflect the color and the apple in that bowl. And when I looked at these bowls, I was like, oh my gosh, there was all these colors in them, and they looked real because of the reflections that were around it. And it's also kind of like I love the Matrix movie, and there's the scene where he has see past the spoon, to bend the spoon, you look past it, and that it's kind of a mindset to be able to see things that are there that you don't realize it. It's kind of like looking at the clouds. What do you actually see? Are there actually unicorns in the clouds? No, but that creativity to see past that is what is really important. And as business owners, that's the kind of vision you want to have. You may not be able to see 10 years down the road. I think Ryan Dykes was talking yesterday about how these BHAG, big audacious goals, are pretty insane half the time, that you don't really reach them. What are attainable goals? And I think those big audacious goals are important, but you got to break it down and have the vision step by step to get there. And so,
yeah, and I think really on the creative part, and just you mentioning that about BHAGs, big, hairy, audacious goals, that you have to have creativity to have BHAG goals. Like Tracy and I were going into taking the blueprint of real estate expert advisors and franchising that blueprint across America. And I think you have to have creativity in your vision, because what if we didn't have the BHAG to know that we do have the ability, there is, we believe that we can do whatever we want to do. And my younger self did not have that same creativity.
yeah,
So just, for us to build a company that, is selling over $11 billion worth of real estate in a year, which is a BHAG. It's a big, hairy, audacious.
it's amazing.
But, and I think that stems from creative thinking of, what if we didn't have that creativity and we just, we didn't have that belief system. You know what I'm saying?
No.
Jim Rohn says it best. You either, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
Yeah, definitely. And that goes into perspective. And that, I can touch on perspective a little bit as well. And perspective can be everything. We'll talk about that a little more. But in short, I'm in fitness. I'm a CrossFitter, and my gym has done some really cool things that we could talk about to keep their member and their community. And the one thing about CrossFit is and especially where we work out, the community is huge and it's extremely strong. And I just totally ran a blank, but one of the cool things they did is once all this happened is, they were quick to do home workouts, but they have all this gear in their gym. And they basically said, for all members, we're going to loan out every piece of our equipment. And so not many gyms have done that, or they loaned out a few pieces. But one of the biggest, hardest hit areas are fitness gyms. And they had the vision to see, okay, this isn't slowing down. And for us to maintain our community in fine, we've got all this equipment sitting. Let's give it to all of our, they did it through a lottery. Let's give it to all our gym members. And we'll do these home workouts so we can keep the community driving. And so the amount of feedback that goes on Facebook on a daily basis, because they post workouts Monday through Saturday, is huge. So you can imagine that even though we're separated, it's made the community tighter. And it brings me to, I think it was you who posted the WrestleMania.
The guy running through the gym.
I posted that on their Facebook page, and there's been other ones just like that. Everybody's itching to get back to the gym. And I think in part it's because of that communication and giving to the community. And, how as a business owner can you get that perspective to see that ahead of time, to do that to your customers or your community? Because I know in real estate, I have friends that haven't slowed down in selling homes. And you think, oh, it would just completely stop because nobody's showing homes. It hasn't. And which is amazing to me, but people are doing virtual. And I'm actually looking at buying a truck right now because the incentives are crazy. And I went back and I thought about it. I was like, I built a house in 2008. Why would I do that in a down economy? Well, it's actually cheaper. And so was it a little riskier? Yes. But hey,
had a great investment on that property if you bought them.
It's worked out over time. And so you have to be able to have the vision to see those things. And that goes into the big, hairy, audacious goal, and to see what that looks like. And I think also being realistic about how do you attain that goal. And I think you and Tracy have been very good to be able to see those goals and make the little steps to get there. And that all comes back to vision. That all comes back to creativity. Does this apply to art? Yes, because it's that part of the mind. You know, everybody says right brain, left brain. In high school, I did a test where I was split 50-50. And it was funny. Now there's this image going around Facebook where it's what colors do you see? And it's tennis shoes, and it's either gray or green or pink and blue, I think. I don't remember. And I actually saw the gray and green, which said you're left brained. And so my brother, who is analytical mathematics, he taught math.
I get those mixed up sometimes, the left and the right, the emotional and the logical.
Right is creative, which
Gotcha. Yeah.
It's funny that you know, I'm the creative guy because I'm also an athlete. When you're talking about you're teasing me about excelling in everything. Is in the business, I handle the books, and I may not be the most detail oriented, but when I'm focused,
very logical,
I can do X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
But as an artist, and I think that's where it distinguishes as an artist, I don't want to get stuck in the details. I want to be free to be creative and to move. And with this painting, if you look at it, what do you see? You see a skull. That's what most people see. But look at it.
Beautiful, all the colors in it.
And you know, my wife goes, "You may not post that because of what's going on." But yesterday was World Art Day. It's like, I'm going to do it anyway. But when you look at it and you think about a skull, what is really the purpose behind a skull? Most people attribute it to death. But what does it really do? It protects one of the most important things in our body, the brain. And if you look at the details behind what a skull is meant to do, it can become a beautiful, beautiful thing. And so you could really, as a person, think about that and take that on a whole other level. And then when you see things, we're talking about vision, what do you actually see? What is really there? And slowing down enough. And that's the biggest thing as entrepreneurs that you have to do. You can get so busy working. But if you don't slow down enough to pay attention to what's around you, to be able to really forecast that big, hairy, audacious goal, then you're going to miss it. And I've been in that. I haven't painted as much for the last few years because business took over. I mean, I do, but man, in the early 2000s, I was painting all the time. And so did I lose my creativity? No, but it can slow down in terms of.
You think you're more creative in your business when you're more engaged in your paintings, like on a more regular basis?
The answer to that is yes.
I noticed myself in jujitsu, because jujitsu, you're figuring out all these different angles, and it's playing chess. It's human chess. And I just noticed myself in jujitsu that I became more creative with seeing, as Jay Abraham says, the CEO that sees around corners, just seeing things in different angles. So you think that you are more creative when you're in your business, when you're painting?
Definitely. It kind of goes back to, there's been studies, I don't have them in front of me, that if employees work over, it's 45 or 50 hours a week, their productivity drops. And so generally within our company, we don't ask for employees to work over 40 hours a week. It's part of our culture. And we want people to be fresh and creative when they come to the office. That I think it was George Lucas had, an area where people could get away, because when you have creative block, you can't just get out of it. You have to really reset your mind. And so for me, actually going through the last few months of preparing for this big painting I was supposed to do until all this happened, I was painting a lot and really slowing down, because as a business owner, there's all these variables that I got to think about. I've got 25 plus people. I've got bills. We've got collections and, new clients, old clients, fires to put out. All these things are in your brain all the time. Plus, I went through 2 audits last year. I had an IRS audit and a sales tax audit back to back. That was brutal. And so if you're like me, you weigh things and you just process. And so at night, I'm good at when I go to sleep, I go to sleep. But when my mind starts, I'm going to go right back to thinking deep on those things. And okay, I remember having to go through the sales tax audit, and the night before, okay, how am I going to communicate this? I was becoming an attorney to debate my case. And I wasn't slowing down enough to really, really process the other things. And so to answer your question in terms of if I'm doing art, am I more creative in my business? Definitely. Because it causes me to slow down and to really let those creative juices flow. And so for you as a business owner, or if you're a real estate agent, or if you're just an employee, that having an outlet to things is important. And part of that, there's these adult kind of coloring books that are like paintings, and you can order them and you can fill them in. You did that as a kid. Now, my aunt does it as an adult. She's a doctor. That's kind of a way she unwinds. But why not do that as an adult? Because part of that lets you not vent, but it lets you release some energy in a different way. And one of I love movies. It's the creative side, like especially if there's visual effects. It just visually stimulates me. And so part of that's a way I can unwind and veg.
Great point. My mother had a friend that's a doctor, and how he would unwind was he would come home and watch Sesame Street.
Mm-hmm. And you need that.
You have to think about anything.
Yeah, and you do need that, but at the same time, the creative aspect. So for me, I don't necessarily gravitate to art because a lot of times that takes up a lot of energy. If I'm going on a stage, people go, "Oh, you took," especially when I started out, "How much for that painting?" Be like, "Oh, it costs this much," and like, "Oh, really?" Even though the material would cost $100 by itself, and that was when I was younger, and they just see that as up there for anywhere from 5 to 45 minutes, and they think, "Oh, I can get that real cheap," and they don't see all the prep or the back story behind it. And even like this painting I'm doing for this celebrity, all the practice. I put hours and hours of practice in, and I still have more to do to really get it to where I want to, because it's, like I said, outside of my comfort zone. But when I'm on stage, especially at that 8,000 person event, the energy it takes, like when you're done, you just want to crash. And I think it's the same way with a lot of things that we do. When you put so much energy to something as a business owner, and you have to be able to recharge. If you don't, you're going to burn out. As a leader with employees, you have to give them the ability to recharge. And so we have a web development, software application development team, and they have been slammed even through all of this, even more so. And we're trying to get a project out the door. And so we're really playing and toting that line of try not to overwork them, but we're also very good about, hey, you need to take a day off. And it doesn't go to vacation. It's, you've been busting your tail. You need to take these 2 days off and recharge.
I see Mimi on one of our great advisors, great friend of ours, and she's a heavy hitter. And I mean heavy hitter by herself this year. Things keep pacing out, and nothing crazy. If we can all get back to work with coronavirus, all that stuff aside, she'd probably sell about $20 million in real estate by herself. So over the years, she pops to mind as one of those that, I told her one time, I was like, because she had like 5, sometimes real estate can be streaky, and she had like 5 deals fall apart, 7 deals fall apart all at one time, which shows you, I can't remember at the time how many she had total to have 7 fall apart at one time. She may have had, 15 deals that she was working. And it wasn't that we lost the clients. It was just those particular transactions we needed to go find other buyers or other sellers for. Mm-hmm. But that's when I was like, hey, we are prescribing you something. And it's called get the heck out of town and go spend time with the ones that you love. Go have fun. Go play all out, while you're there. But you got to get out of here because you're actually being a disservice to yourself, which is a disservice to your family, to your business, etc. So I agree with you 100%. We call it, we have a core value. It's called work hard, play hard. Not play hard, work hard, but work hard, play hard. You go out and, hey, we only hire full-time producers in our firm. So, as Tony Robbins says, if you want to, change your results, you got to raise your standards. And, so that's all that we work with here. But, they work hard. But
Yeah.
also, you got to take that time to play hard too. So uh, I'm picking up what you are putting down.
Well, and I could take that a step further, and this kind of goes into perspective, is that as having employees, there's times that they may be drowning, and you got to have the vision to be able to see that. But even at the same time, she could have been drowning and needing that recharge.
Yeah.
And it takes leadership to be able to train your people to ask for help. And I think you guys are very good about reaching out and asking for help about how you need to do what you need to do. But there's a lot of people, and I'm one of those, I generally don't ask for help. It's like, okay, I'm just going to take it day by day and do what I know to do.
Yeah.
But, and asking questions is, I listen a lot, but sometimes I don't necessarily know what questions to ask. Is like, okay, what questions do I really need to know? And I'm getting better at that, just being around a bunch of entrepreneurs and war room and whatnot. And so, but understanding that if you're drowning or in quicksand, it's okay to reach out and ask for help.
Yes, sir.
And especially during this time that there are a lot of businesses struggling, and how can we help them? There's people that may have
That's
to
what
sell
this
their
episode's about. That's
right.
why we started this mastermind.
Yeah.
It's for people to reach out. This episode, you being on, you were nice enough, super successful businessman, and Brad would never say that about himself, but I'll say it about him. Super valuable time is what you have, and thank you for giving us an hour of your time. But it's reason why you said, "Hey, I'll do it." It's to help other entrepreneurs, right?
Yeah. Well, the biggest thing for me is relationships. And when we go back to the story about the former employee who ended up creating the music bed, is that you never know. And if I hadn't ever bridged the gap, I wouldn't have my creative director that I still have today. And
Love it.
You have to be able to do those things, and you have to be able to slow down and have the vision and creativity to look past sometimes what you see. And then the perspective to be able to step back. If you're drowning in an issue or something like that, and you can only see past, what's in front of you, then you either need to ask for help, or you need to be able to step away far enough so you can get the big picture. And so it's kind of like if you're looking at a Google map and you're looking at your house, you only see this one little thing. But once you go up into the sky and you can see everything around you, it creates a whole new picture. And as
a 10,000 foot view.
That's right. But how many times do we not slow down enough to really do that? And then when you see that view, you still look at that one little spot and you zoom into it. But what about everything around it? And I think for you guys talking about expanding all across the nation, well, you're looking at that 10,000 foot view, and then you have to pinpoint, okay, there's these things and the details that go into that. And I think that's extremely important, but not slowing down, just to continue to push through and do what you need to do to be successful. And so, it kind of goes back to, you're calling me out like I'm uber successful. Is that, yeah, it's that there's always people that you see as more successful than you. Because when you talk about Mimi, $20 million worth of houses, I'm like, man, that's amazing. If I can sell 20 million of what we sell, that would be, awesome. It's a different kind of business, but still, but the business principles still apply. And I think there's anybody here, whether it's $100,000 or whether it's 100 million, we all deal with the same things. And sometimes they're scaled bigger, but when we were 5, 6, 7 people, it's like, man, this is hard. And really a creative agency with 7 people is hard, because you don't have enough people to manage certain things. You're doing everything. And so where we're at with 25 plus, we have teams or people that are over certain things, and it makes it a little easier. But there are days like, man, it would be a lot easier to go back to 7 because we could stay in a specific lane. But that's not where we're headed, and that's not where our vision is taking us. And the cool thing, last year was a hard year for us just because of the audits. Now, profit wise and gross revenue wise, it was good. But there's always other variables. And so, but when I started to present kind of last year an overview to our team, I started to look at them, and I'm looking at all the good things that happened, and my perspective shift. And so one of the things that my CrossFit gym is doing is they're asking these questions every day. And they said, what is the one thing that has really been your saving grace during this time? And it made me think. He's like, you know what? Perspective. That if you have the right perspective and mindset, you're going to come out successful. And a lot of times we see what's around us and all the difficult things that are going on, and we can really get stuck in that and not see the beauty behind what is actually there. And so, as we know, a lot of businesses thrive in difficult times. And I know Roland talked about, how much can you profit in, a difficult economy or whatnot. And so it's a valid question. And I think one thing that Jen and Chris shared with me yesterday is, for me as an artist, I'm doing a disservice if I don't put myself out there. Yes. That hit me between the eyes. And so if I'm not doing my part, then it's a trickle effect. And as businesses, if we're not growing and leading others to grow, then the trickle down effect makes the economy worse. And so we have to have the right mindset to be like, you know what, it may be bad, but we're going to push through and make this as excellent as it can be, that it's really not as bad as it seems. And that's a perspective area. And that all comes back to creativity and the art side, the right side of your brain, really slowing down to see that picture. And I think
kept the top three, because you start out, you mentioned the three things of unleashing your creative genius within you. The first one started out on vision.
Then creativity, and then perspective.
And the perspective.
And so we've kind of touched those. It wasn't like we've touched them all in different pieces. And so I actually was kind of looking back at the notes of my overall kind of presentation that I've been working on. And so the
first thing, you got to have the vision.
Correct.
You have to have the creativity, and then three, the perspective of changing, which is changing your mindset. And before you and I hopped on this call, heck, time gets away with me. My schedule has been so darn weird. Like, I'm talking about, like, last couple of nights I'll work to like 2:30 in the morning, and then I'll wake up at 8:30 in the morning, which I usually wake up at way earlier than that traditionally. But I've been taking these naps like in the middle of the day for like an hour and a half. And wow. Then it's like a second win for me to just, I've been knocking a lot of crap out. So I'm not like complaining with my new weird schedule. But it's been like a second win for me to just freaking run from 5 to 2 in the morning too. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Which may not be good, sustainable, but just the perspective of, everything is in between our ears. We can be in stinking thinking mode right now, of gloom and doom, and we've been talking on past episodes about, you gotta, going back to Jim Rohn, we can fill our minds with treasure or trash. And it's up to us what we're filling our minds with. Those that are on the call right now, they're filling their minds with treasure because they could be on Netflix binge watching Tiger King, which is probably pretty safe to say that that's probably,
you did it.
It's not entertainment, but it's trash. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. That's not going to keep your business surviving right now. But those that are on the call right now, changing their perspective, to thrive, to be, even if you're a restaurant right now, God, I feel for those folks so bad right now. I went to pick up Mexican at our favorite Mexican restaurant last night, and there's like 3 people working when there's normally like 15 or 20 people working. So that just means all those waitresses and waiters and bartenders, etc., they can't work at all. But America's strong, and we'll get back to where we need to be. But
yeah.
Go ahead. What are you about to say?
No, you made me think about, and I was going to pull it up because I was going to read it, because you're talking about perspective. And, we had our mastermind yesterday, and we do this thing called Wicked Smart. And so
Wicked Smart with SMAHT, which is a challenge, which is a contest to we're, War Room is full of like really the brightest minds, entrepreneur minds on the planet. I don't, actually it's, even Googling it, there's not a better mastermind that you can find out there, based upon reviews, and just really blessed to be around,
Yeah.
you got to be the dumbest, talking about perspective, being the dumbest one in a room. And that's not hard for me to do sometimes. A lot of times it's not. But when Tracy and I stepped in that room, and, it was just changing your perspective and changing your mind that, God, it's just endless possibilities. Go ahead. My bad, brother.
No, you're good. So I presented this email that I sent out, and there's a lot of smart people in this group, and they have a lot of different perspectives, and they're uber successful. And with what we're at, I'm like, okay, we have to figure out how in this crazy time we can get collections, because anticipating that collections are going to go down. The first week we had, it was extremely stressful trying to get budgets to where they need to be, anticipating what's going to happen. And so that first week was hard, but then that mindset and that perspective shifted in me. Okay, I can't stay in this zone for very long. I have to start painting a good picture to the employees. We did what we had to do. We're not going to make any more changes, and we're good in terms of the next 3, however long this goes. And so the same thing was, okay, we're stable in my perspective at the time. How are we going to connect with our clients in a way that engages them? We ask for money in a way that isn't saying, hey, we need money because we're going to die, or you better pay me because you're over 30, 60, 90 days, whatever that is. If you're in real estate, maybe a little different, but I think this kind of mindset applies. And so the first part, I talk about it being a whirlwind, and understanding paying bills has changed because people aren't going to the office. And so we have an online portal. But this is what I wanted to read. And one person actually called it a dirty email, because it's just the way it's written, it touches on a lot of different factors. And so what I wrote is, as with many businesses right now, we are working through getting jobs done while maintaining cash flow and payments. We're doing our best to keep up to date with our bills with printers and other vendors. We hope you are able to do the same. As businesses, doing our part will ensure we can all come out stronger with a bright future. And so the reason why I say that is because we broke this down yesterday, and what they talked about is we are working through getting jobs done. And so that line right there shows that we're still in business. And then, but we still have cash flow and payments that we got to make. And so we're doing our best to stay up to date with those things. But then as it goes through, it's flipped, and we hope you will do the same. And so it's kind of like, okay, we're doing our part, you need to do your part. And if we do that together, there's a bright future. And so the feedback was that because of the way that was written,
your copywriting is changing perspective.
Correct. And so I'm not a copywriter, even though I think I've gotten better, in part because I've slowed down to process and think through what needs to be said. I can paint fast all day long, but being able to word things in a manner that keeps that relationship intact is important for me, because that's really what we are. And at the end of the day, if a client can't pay, we're going to work it out. And even to a point where even getting new clients in, we're kind of changing our terms a little bit just to make sure things keep moving. And so how can you get creative with your processes, or how you bill, or what you do to ensure that the next 3 months are stable, but that puts you on a track for success when you come out of it? Because we are going to come out of this, as we've heard many times, there will be a snapback. And what are you doing to get ahead of the curve? What are you doing to, gain market share in your area of expertise?
Now, everybody's watching you too. Not, everybody's watching all of our companies and what we do right now. And, we have to do what we can do to all stay afloat. But, just going back to the strategy of preeminence and being the number one most trusted advisor, falling in love with your client, not your products and services, falling in love with your external client being, for us, those that we, buy and sell homes, but also the internal client, which to us is, our agents, which we call advisors, and our staff and employees, etc. But just, it's not, what if we just, when this all happened, what if our leadership was, okay, we're shutting the doors for 3 months? Because we could have done that. We could have made that decision. Hey, we're turning off everything. Because this is a cash built company that we built. The only expenses that we have are, basically marketing, and, a lease is the only, expenses, because we could turn it off. But if we turned it off, we would be letting a lot of people down. Being our internal clients that previously mentioned, but we'd also be doing a huge disservice to the community, like you were speaking about earlier, because there are people right now that need us. They need us to help them still sell their home. They need us to help buy a home. So that's where Tracy and I, we stepped up our creative genius within us. And, I used to have a limiting belief in my mind, and I used it for a long time, even in this business that Tracy and I built. And that limiting belief is that, hey, I'm a good modeler, copypreneur, whatever you want to call it. And I don't mean copying inside of our industry. I've taken a lot of stuff that I've used in other industries and input it into here, which is called caused innovation and differentiation in our industry. But I've always said, hey, Tracy's the creative one, and she's super creative. But I think when I was pigeonholing myself to say, hey, that's not one of my super skills, is being creative, I was thinking most of in the graphic design type stuff, which I'm still probably not the best one. I'm definitely not the one to come stage your home or do any kind of interior decorating to your home. That's not where my creative genius lives. My creative genius lives in, but copywriting. So I had to open my mind that, hey, I am super creative. But again, going back to Jim Rohn's, hey, when you think you can, you can. My mother used to say that, even going back to childhood, she would say, can't, never, could do anything. And how true is that? Can't, never, could do anything. And that, going back to your creative entrepreneur that lives within all of us, we're all creative. Brad talked earlier about going back to childhood. And, when you were telling that story, I went back to my early childhood, and actually where I went back to, and I have this memory in my head for some odd reason, I had to be maybe 5 or 6 years old. But I remember riding in the car with my father, and I was young, and I was daydreaming. And what I was doing is I was looking up into the sky and looking into the clouds. So it's kind of weird that you brought me back to that memory that I have in my mind, as a child. But how creative we were. And yes, I totally believe in school, and yes, I know you believe in school as well. But some of the stuff kind of stifled our creation along, our creative genius that lives within us along the way. And we had to tap back into that. And I think some of the stuff working with Burnoff, helps me tap back into, speaking to that child that lives within me, that is creative.
So here's what I would challenge you and anybody in here for that is, in the church world, people may do devotionals, or they may meditate, or different things like that. For this, I would say take 5 minutes and stop and slow down and look at that. Look at the clouds, or get with your kids and ask them, what do you see? And slow down and really think about, as a kid, what you did. Because as a kid, I did coloring books. I could probably guess everybody here did. Did you color inside the lines or outside the lines? I remember as a kid coloring outside the lines, but then I got very detailed. I'm going to make this perfect, right? And then I remember getting into school, and I would kind of do the same thing, and you sit there all day. But in high school, I had you would put you would wrap your books with paper, and I would always flip it backwards so I could draw on the book. And so one of the things that really drove me as an artist too, and there's a lot of people like this, and so I encourage this. And if I was speaking at a group, I would love to have paper out and pencils so people would do this. Is if I'm in a setting where there's a lot of people around, there's a speaker, it's better for me to have a pen and paper and draw and doodle than to be staring and listening without and trying to take notes, because I can focus more not looking at them by letting it process through my mind and doodling than I can the other way. And that happened a lot in high school, and because that's what I did. I would doodle and draw. It just lets that creativity go. And God, I think it's Elizabeth in War Room. She's done studies on that, the auditory thing where they'll give people things to squeeze in a session when they're speaking, and it gives them enough distractions so that they can actually focus on the speaker. And so I believe that to be true. And as kids, we don't have that. You got to do your homework. You got to do this. It's interesting now that everybody's homeschooled to see how that changes. But yeah, it's completely true. And so I challenge people to slow down and sit. And if even getting a piece of paper and just doodling and drawing stick figures or whatever, that you may not have been an artist, but you probably colored. That's creative. And if you think back to that time and how you were and the imagination and creativity that flowed through your brain and the vision that you had, how would that be if you translated that today? If you took that childlike mindset and let go of all those preconceived ideas, man, it would be exponential. And so and this goes back to the question you asked me, you doing art, do you find yourself more creative in your business? And the answer is yes, but we got to slow down enough to do it. And so that would be my one challenge today, because, I know you've got an hour, is that try it. And I would love for some feedback of, man, I did that, and you wouldn't believe the creativity and imagination that came. Man, I had a new vision for my business because I slowed down enough to do it.
So my big question is, what are you about to say, Tracy? Go ahead.
I jump in. I keep trying to jump in. I haven't had a chance. And then our yard guy was outside, he's been right outside my window for the last 45 minutes. So I was like, if I go on, it's going to be so noisy, but he's left, so I can jump in. And I want to say that from the beginning, I agree that you have to have that time away to help you think. And so being inside, what I've been doing, and it's really worked, because I didn't start doing it until about a week ago. And I've noticed just in the last couple days, how much I needed that just to get away for a minute and then go back to work. So we have this puzzle table in our dining room, right? And it's just full of color, and it's just different, and it allows because I'm very right brain, and I love your picture behind you that you did is amazing. It's amazing, and I can just see so many different things from that, right? I love the colors, I love the thought, I love the stimulation, all that kind of stuff. And so that's what the colors in these puzzles do for me, is they stimulate my brain. It gives it a little bit of a break where you're like, at first I feel guilty at first when I started doing, I'm like, oh, I've got so much to do. And I'm like, you know what? No, I'm not going to be good at what I need to go back and do, because I hit a roadblock for a minute. Yeah. And I needed to back out for a minute, because I would have been sloppy if I finished it then, because I wouldn't have been as creative if I just stepped back for a minute. Yeah. Diagnosed it while I'm trying to be creative and find these pieces and make my mind think of something different, so that when I went back to work, it allowed me to stop for a minute. So the other night I had to do a script. I had to record a script for radio. And honestly, after 2 hours, I was kicking myself, oh, you stumbled on that word, or you did this, or you did that. And I finally just had to walk away. I was like, why am I having such a hard time? Yes, it was 11 o'clock at night, and I had been working all day, but I needed to do this. And why was I stumbling? There's no reason for why I kept stumbling the way I was. And so I did 20 minutes of this puzzle, and I came back first go. completely done. It was the best one I had recorded, and I'm like, I just needed to get away. And so I completely agreed with that. And you know, when I color, I'm like extreme, like I got to make sure that I bold out every single detail darker than how I'm going to color the inside. And so that's just how I totally get what you're saying. And I think that everybody should apply that. So I used to have this saying that in real estate, the only time I have a moment to painting soothes my mind, right? Coloring and painting, but I would do like extreme projects. Like if I'm going to paint, I'm going to redo a whole room, right? And that's just how my brain is. And a lot of people can't understand that, like, oh crap, she's about to paint something. And it's not about really necessarily painting, but it allows me just to step back. And so I used to say, my time off is when it snows in Georgia. And that way I'm going to hit a project and I'm going to paint, and painting soothes me, and I can think while I'm painting, and it just allows me just to let go. And we haven't had snow days in a while, so it's not like I'm painting. I'm just now finding like I'm pretending that we're painting. And especially with this coronavirus, I'm like, gosh, that's why I have these puzzles, or that's why I sit back for a minute. I am, and going through Biernoff's course allowed me to realize like how I learn, right? So I have, when I go to conferences, you'll see me with like every color of the rainbow marker, highlighters, all that kind of stuff. And that's how I operate on a daily basis. If I gave you my notebook, you're going to see that's green. If you can see it, I think
goes in and out. You got your background going.
And then if I move to another,
which is creative, by the way, her background.
Yeah.
It's completely a different page, the next page. And so I've got all these different colors that I operate with because it keeps stimulating my brain to pay attention. It stimulates my brain while I'm writing to pay attention to what I'm writing. So it helps, you know, with that creativity of just something so simple. The reasons why I use all this different ink is because it keeps my mind flowing, just like the puzzle, just lets me sit back for a moment. So I love everything that you've said. I completely can understand that. So anybody that hasn't started to, you know, if you're like, I'm stumped, I'm not creative, or gosh, you know, he's more creative, you know what, you might also, we have a daughter who I had no idea could draw at all until Art, her senior year, draws this zebra in class, who made it on a website with like blending grays and blacks and all that. She didn't even know she could draw until they gave her the project, you know? And so
she does some really great stuff too. It's like she awakened her inner creative genius.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's in all of us, and we just don't realize it. Art is, there can be so many different things to art. And like, she didn't know she could draw, and drawing is a part of it. And I believe anybody can draw. The one thing I can't teach is imagination. And I can teach somebody to draw. That's why you have all these like wine and painting places. You can go paint a painting and drink wine. People that aren't artists are taught how to paint these paintings. And so, but
we need to have another episode just on imagination. You said that one key word, and sorry I stopped you, but we need another episode that's just on imagination.
Well, we'll have to do another episode again too, because you know I was somewhat ready to paint something if that came up, but the whole thing behind this, like what you're saying, Tracy, that you took the time to slow down and do these puzzles or these drawings, but you were waiting for a snow day. And in what I want you to all get is that don't wait for a snow day. That this needs to be a weekly, daily type thing, because the more you're energized inside, the more it's going to affect the business. And you brought up an example. One of my creative director was doing these forums. It was an interactive forum, which you do all the time. I can build those. They're not hard, but we had about 10 to do for a client, and he was up at our office till like midnight one night trying to do these, and he didn't get hardly any of them done. I think he got like 2 or 3 because he was so burned out and tired because he worked late into the night. And so I get there the next morning, I'm like, okay, what did you do? What's the problem? And he says, I had all these forms to do. And I was like, it took you that long? Here, I'll do them. And I had them all done in like an hour. Number one, I'm pretty good at that. But he was so ingrained and burned out at that point, he couldn't get anything done. And I think as business owners, we forget to realize when we're at that point and we're not as productive. And that's where it takes the time to step back, do something fun and creative, even going for a walk. It may not be creative, but what can happen on a walk? You see trees, you see sky, and you get rejuvenated, and that creativity can flow. Imagination can run. And so that's the thing that I would really challenge people to do, is take that time to be creative and to slow down and let your imagination go.
Hey, brother, huge favor, because I
Yeah.
know your time is super valuable. And you mentioned, hey, I was actually prepared to paint, and I actually promised folks that, hey, he's going to do something that you've probably never seen before. And I don't want to, if you have time,
I got time.
because I don't want to go back on my promise. And I would love to see you paint something. What about y'all?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would like to do that for like a happy hour, like one evening for our company, is to do an event. You tell us what supplies everybody needs to get. You pick the music, you tell them what we need to draw, and let's see, you tell us what we need to do, and then let's see what everybody, like, we don't see their paintings while it's happening, and then everybody just shares what they did.
Okay, well, I mean, I could actually walk
getting those juices available.
That'd be a good challenge for you to do also, Brad. A good
It could. Well, I could actually walk through it now. So just for granted, since you've seen it, I could paint something random. I could paint the skull and kind of talk you through that mindset wise. I could do a lion as well. That's pretty straightforward. I mean, there's tons of things that I could do. And
I want you to do what you feel would be relevant and the most creative for this, what we've been talking about today.
Well, hopefully it'll be done in 5 minutes. So, I'll just wing it and figure it out. So give me, I found some music online too. So if you're up for it, I'll switch this around.
Cool.
And make sure.
Hey, this is your show, bro. Run with it.
This is your show. Oh, I'm gonna move this so hopefully you can see it better. And right here. So I tried to find some music online that was free. So just tell me, is this sound okay on your end? Is it too loud? Is that too loud?
I'm turning my computer down.
I can turn it down, but it's always better with music. So,
does that help get your creative juices flowing?
Well, I mean, I could talk to you and do it if you want, but music is always better. It's kind of like if you go to a movie and you see a scene and you see that scene without music, it feels totally different. And
I think you should use the music, and we can all turn down our levels if we need to, but I think that's going to help you do what you need to do. I think it's
absolutely.
about you right now.
Okay, and I can turn down my music a little bit too, just so it's not.
I was just asking that. I think that's cool because I think different things stimulate our, creative juices within us. And I was just asking him the question that, hey, does that help you get more creative with the music?
Well, what's cool is that with the music, generally, I move with the music. And I'm not starting in churches that I couldn't throw paint everywhere. But the more energy behind the music, the more energy I move faster. The slower the music, the slower I go. And it's the same thing like when you run or you work out. If you're running, do you keep the same pace when the music slows down? Probably not. And so you got to think about
I love the psychology behind things. Was my reason for asking.
So here, let me, we'll just try to wing this and see what happens. Cool. All right, there you go. Something fast.
Wow, that's amazing. That's awesome. I love all the color. So how?
Oh, let me turn the music off real quick, then I can hear you.
I couldn't even get the nose done in 5 minutes, and you just painted a whole entire photo.
I would have all the paint all over me within 2 minutes.
Now I can hear you.
Not on the canvas. That's amazing. I love all that color. I love the blue and what color is that? Is that orange or like a neon?
It's orange, yeah. I just grabbed. So I'm actually
That's beautiful,
clean to
brother.
order paint. I haven't been able to go shopping, so I'm somewhat limited on what I would normally use. But yeah, it's orange, some blue, mainly kind of an ochre color, and brown and black. And so, but yeah, that's a quick, probably less than 5 minutes, because that song was 5 minutes. And as with this, that there's probably some things I could do better. But the cool thing is, it's not meant to be perfect. It's meant
Correct.
to have energy. Like you'll see all the brush stroke. It's really thick. I can move it in closer, and you'll see. I mean, you can probably see it from there, but as you get closer, you can see all the brush strokes and how thick it is. That's really kind of my style overall. The thicker the paint, the better. But when I talk about perspective, and this is a big thing about when I'm talking about art, is that when you're up close, you see one thing and you see all that texture and brushstroke. But when you step away, if I took a step that's farther and farther away, it's going to look more and more like a lion, kind of like a Seurat painting, if you know any art history, or Monet. And so that's the cool thing about it. And that's applies in business, is that perspective, up close versus far away.
I love that. I love how you wrapped it and tied it all in there.
Yeah.
Well, shoot, I really appreciate your time today. Tracy, is there anything that that you wanted to end with?
I went live, so we had it so that everybody could see. That was really, really cool to see what they missed out on. So I allowed them to come into our world for a few minutes. That's so awesome. I was saying a minute ago, I couldn't even finish like the nose. I wouldn't even know where to start. I couldn't even finish a nose or an ear in 5 minutes. It's absolutely amazing. What a great job.
It's beautiful.
I'll buy that painting. So just
yes, we both will buy. We both want that painting.
Yep,
Okay.
so
We're willing to pay for it. Don't
that's an
expect
invoice,
you to.
and we'll take that painting off your hands.
But
Absolutely.
so I have a painting like this similar. I was in the background during the war room the last couple of days, and I had Vinny. He's a good friend of mine. He goes, "I want that painting," or "I want one, a different one." But yeah, I mean, lions are so fun. They're great for kids, and there's so much meaning behind it for a lot of different reasons. It's not just being a king, the strength, or tiger king.
Yeah.
And so I could talk about it, but I think you seeing it and feeling it, that there were certain things and emotions you probably felt during the midst of that. And that's what makes the live painting and creative aspect so powerful. And generally, I don't carry a lot of paintings because like that, hey, I want the painting. And that's kind of how it's supposed to be and, meant to work. So no, it's been my pleasure. Like I said yesterday, if you ever want me on, I'm more than willing and happy to jump back on and talk more about
Awesome.
imagination, creativity.
Well,
Yeah,
hey, brother,
totally.
we appreciate your time, and we appreciate your friendship, and anything that we can ever do for you, we'd love to help you out.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Bless you guys. Thank you again.
Have an awesome day. We love
God
you.
bless you too.
Thanks.
Tell the family we said hello.
I'll do it. Hopefully this will be over when we come see you.
Absolutely.
All right.